welcome to another Roman holiday Playguide and review. This one is Carthage, developed and published by Psygnosis and released in time for Christmas 1990. This is a strategy game, and like most strategy games, it opens up with a map, which on slow Amigas can take some time to draw. And you can see this is the expanded map of the game. If we find our mouse pointer, we can see we are being attacked, so let's press the Carthage button and we get to see the makers and the designers of this game. And David Worrell only called it Carthage, and Jeff Bramfitt was a graphics artist who worked on many games. Tim Wright created the music, and of course co-founder of Psygnosis, Ian Hetherington. If we press the H button to access the high score table, it will say, "Are you sure this will quit the entire game?" And if you select yes, then it will eventually load it. By clicking on these characters, we can see the high scores of the makers of the game, and it's quite fun to see this because they've obviously spent a huge amount of time playing it. You can see some great graphics at this stage, and to escape from this we have to press the H key, and then eventually the game will load up. So here we go again, back to the main game, and Carthage is a unique strategy game because it involves two unique sections, and all you get on the bottom of the screen is view and game. You can see the Romans are attacking us in ships and they will land at a port, and you can see Carthage is the one with the flag against it. That's actually a vessel that's landed in Carthage. By clicking on game, you can see we can load and save a game, we can make it go faster and slower, and we can also have a new game, and the X1 is actually the speed that we're actually playing at the moment. If we start a new game, that will put the Romans landing in a completely different direction, and we can force the Romans to land anywhere on the map. So this is slightly further away from Carthage. You can see it's heading straight towards that flag, and flags are very important in this game. By clicking on the map, we can zoom in on our immediate area, and that's very important. We can also check out all the other areas, and it will show the Romans as they are attacking us. And at this stage it's very important to protect Carthage itself, because if Carthage falls, that's perhaps game over. By clicking on the map, we can zoom in on this area, and that reveals our local vicinity. In Carthage itself we have a main army and also a chariot racer who will race his chariot between the cities, and at this stage I'm just going to move my army to that flag, and that will slowly move its way towards that city. You can see inside Carthage itself we have 5,000, and inside our courier we only have 500, and 500 talents in this case is not going to buy as much, so let's increase that to 740. And to move our carrier around and recruit a new army, we just drag that onto the map, and that initializes a new section which is on the joystick, and it's a buggy boy type game where we have to drive our chariot down this road. See a very pleasant effect in the sky as we get colour graded effects, and it's a very pleasant atmosphere as we glide our way around casually these Iron Age fortifications that we're moving around at the moment. You can see that we're also carrying a red sack around with us on our chariot, and as we collide with, well, tree trunks that have managed to find their way onto the middle of the road, then we will lose some of our money. And as we shall see very, very later on, money is the objective of the game. We have to take the money from Carthage itself. If we catch up with a Roman, he will attempt to sabotage us, and now we have to whip him or his horses or collide with his chariot, and the collision will eventually make him back off and disappear. can also choose to back off by pulling the joystick backwards, and the horses will canter at their own speed leisurely. There are hills in the game, and if we are going slow enough, we'll have to whip the horses to make them go up hills. If it's too steep a hill, then the horses will stop, but luckily we've made it towards our destination, and you can see the city wall approaching, and what we do is drive into the city itself. Roman army is slowly moving its way towards that flag, and by clicking on the flags you can see the name of the city. It's Mistua, and you can see that they've got some money but only 7 guards guarding the place. If we take it Utica, then they've got 80 of the cavalry, 29 guards and 26 archers. And if we take it Curubis, well, not much there. And Papute, well, Papute, we didn't really get to see much in there, but they do have some army. We can navigate around the map, and by clicking on the arrows that will actually turn the map around. If you click the left and the right arrow, that will manipulate the map through 45 degrees, whichever way you're pointing, and if you click the down arrow it will reverse the map and make up go down and down go up. But I prefer the map straight on like this, so that north is actually north. And let's zoom in again to our action. You can see we can also press back at any time, and that will take us to our previous zoom, and in this case we've zoomed out to X2, and from X2 it gives us some time to zoom in to see the action. You can see the Roman army is taking a nearby village, so what we have to do is to get our forces over there and to build a new army. If we build a new army by sending out our charioteer to a new city, he can use his cash to build up some of the army, and at this point we can buy whatever forces there were in the city. In this case 68 soldiers, and so we can assign those 68 soldiers you can see under the soldier flag, and with no archers, with literally nothing else. By clicking on that we can assign a number of troops into a battalion, and you can see I'm assigning a number of troops. When I click on the fortification again, we can assign another battalion. So in this case we've only afforded 2 battalions in that army, and in this case I'm going to move that battalion well out of the way while our main battalion comes to attack. All we need to do is to move that battalion onto something and it will attack something, and if we move it directly onto a Roman it will try to attack, but in my experience that doesn't really work. So what we're going to do is to move on to a new city. At this stage we could take it easy because our main army is dragging its feet to get to the Romans, and at this stage we don't have much cash around. Romans will stop at nothing to try to get to us, and if we hurry along too quickly down that road we'll find a Roman just waiting for us, and we'll have to take that guy out by ramming his wheels. The wheels will then wobble and he'll get out of the way. At this stage it's important for us to get out of the way of those logs, otherwise we won't have any cash remaining to buy troops once we get to the next city. You can see the city on the horizon, a few hills, but sometimes those logs are very difficult to see, especially when the chariot takes most of the road area that you can actually see. Racing towards the next stage, you can see the city is approaching, but with no money left, and with those hills in the way, the road is steadily getting a little bit harder. We can even crash into the back of those guys, and so let's take this guy on. We can ram him into the side, or we can whip him or his horses, and that sometimes works, and it can help us a great deal to avoid these guys sometimes, to slow down behind them. We don't have to take on all of these, and if we attack him from the left like this, then we will attack that guy from the left, and that means if we've got a dodgy left wheel, we can preserve that. So let's take a chunk out of his wheel, and hopefully we can see that guy off before we reach the city. Our Roman army has been demolished, whatever we sent towards the Romans, and we'll see why a little bit later. For now we can start a new army with our rider, and that new army will be a new helmet, and you can see that all we can buy for the moment is whatever was in that city, and that was absolutely nothing at all. And that happens, all you're going to have to do is to buy some units, which we shall see later on. And yes, no matter how much you click on that helmet to recruit the guys, there won't be anything there. But for the moment, the interesting part is that we've got our main Roman legion, because we do start our main Carthaginian legion, and we do start with one whole legion at the beginning of the game. Let's zoom in and let's slow down the game to its slow speed so that we can take on the Romans, and the Roman is the silver helmet and we are the gold one. When we are in range of those silver helmeted Romans, you can see they've taken over a city and they've posted a few cavalry guards outside. So when we turn up, the first thing we need to do is to click on that golden helmet, and that will stop the main general, because if the main general gets attacked and killed, then that's the war, or at least the siege, over. And we don't want to end the battle early by getting our general killed. We can then drag and drop units into position, and the first thing that the Romans like to do is to send out a skirmish party. So at the beginning of every encounter, I like to drag and drop units directly in front, then they will absorb any instant attacks by the Romans. You see the Romans are just hanging around at the moment, but they have sent, or rather they are thinking about sending, a skirmish party to take us on. We have a big force here with lots of units all piled up, and we shall see as I get through this how we're supposed to play the game. And let's leave our general as far back as possible for the moment, and the slowest units, in this case the catapults, will take the longest time to set up and move around. So if you set up the catapults early and get those moving early, that's a great thing, but they won't be able to move through other units. So just like other board games, you'll have to move other units out of the way before those big siege engines and those big catapults will be able to move. Right at the back of our column we've got elephants and catapults, and that doesn't really stand us into good stead at the moment. And it looks like the Romans have plucked up courage to send out a skirmish party, or at least a scouting party of a few cavalry units. Up front we have 2 cavalry units, 1 legion of soldiers and 1 legion of archers. What can we do with those? Well, if we drag those on top of each other, they will follow each other, and by dragging and dropping the leader, we can then move them as a whole unit, which means we can drag many units together at the same time, and drag all of those into battle at the same time. Until we click on the Romans, they won't fight, and in the meantime, wherever we drag and drop them, they will move. The Romans are approaching, yes, they are approaching, and they're getting quite nervous at the moment because we have a large party. We have only 1 at the beginning of the game. we can't move our general unless he's facing in the left direction, and when that happens, all of our units will try to get behind the general to move off. And we cannot edit the camp and the train, unfortunately, of units. The general will head off directly towards the enemy general, and when that happens by dragging and dropping units together, then our general will simply die and we'll lose the entire battalion. So we don't want to do that. We'll simply drag and drop units ahead of that and hope that we can in fact save ourselves from the Romans. You can see they've hidden some cavalry down by the water beyond our view, beyond the hill, and they're sending a couple of Roman soldiers to try and march up the front. And all we can do is to try to gather our units around and to try to buffer those like a sponge. Drag and drop element is a lot better than some games that we've seen, and a heck of a lot quicker as well. And zooming in at this level, we get to see our army and we get to see those units moving around, and at this point it's definitely one of those skirmish games where strategy definitely matters. In this case my strategy is breaking down. We've opened up the front lines and exposed our general. The Romans are marching straight towards the general with their cavalry, and so all we can do is march our cavalry in at the last possible second and try to defend our general. Again, we can't move him unless he's facing to the left, and if we do that then all of our units will get behind him and stop. So we can't do that. All we can do is carry on with the battle. See, we can zoom into an extra level and that will show us the battle in fine detail, and that's usually the plan view that I like to use. You can see that our soldiers have already squashed the enemy, and by right clicking our mouse on the enemy we can see how many units that they have available in that squad. And we've managed to get rid of them and they're dropping like flies, but we've exposed a very weak centre of our army, and although the slumbering slow elephants are moving towards, unfortunately they won't get to the enemy in time, so I really should be concentrating on that cavalry, the horse heads, and they should hopefully clash with the enemy quickest and dispatch those at this stage. Throwing everything into the mix, we can see we've managed to trap the enemy into an envelope, and now the enemy has nowhere to go except to die, and so those numbers that we can see highlighted, and we can move those around the play area, which is a unique feature to this game. You can see those are demolished. Finally, the last of the skirmish party disappears, and now it's time for us to reorganise our troops. Unfortunately for us, the Roman army is some way down the road, and that means that we're going to have to get everybody behind our general again. And in this game the map system is unwieldy, but at least we have the back button, and that will take us back to our previous view, and hopefully if we use that and zoom in on the bottom of the map we can get a better idea of where we are going. But any units that we haven't directed into that area will be left off our visual map, and so it's important to get all of our troops into that map window. Seems like a good idea to march those slowly towards the enemy, but I'm having second thoughts about that already. I really should be getting those troops together, and that unfortunately it means we're going to have to collect those behind the general. And yes, you can do it from this plan view, but it's just a little bit too high for my liking. You can see we've actually managed to get most of our units ahead of the general, and that's usually a good thing in a skirmish. You can see the graphics are very well drawn, and they do give us a relief map of the actual map of the game. And by clicking on the general, we can make him turn to the left, and that means that all of our units will slowly get behind him, very slowly, depending on the game speed that you've chosen to play the game in. And we're playing, I think, in 1 speed, X1, so that means that they will move as slowly as possible. Unfortunately, you cannot drag the general to a specific location. The general will only move to a city or towards the general of another army. So if we drag and drop the general onto one of those, he will then eventually set off into that direction, as long as all of our units are behind him. Sometimes it helps to speed up the game at this point, and that speeds up this entire process, so let's do that. Let's switch to, well, there are 10 speed settings in this game, so let's move it up to speed 7, and now you can see that hopefully if I drag and drop, eventually the guy will start to manoeuvre, and the whole legion as a whole will manoeuvre behind him and set off down the road. Finally, everybody's got together and all in a big rush. We are now rushing towards the enemy, so let's slow down again, all the way down to X1, and let's try again to get our troops into battle. We want to leave our general as far behind as possible, and if you leave him in the middle of the screen like this, that means he will appear at the top of the map when we zoom into the next map level, and that's precisely what we need. For the moment, let's just drag everybody forwards and arrange everybody, and let's see what we have, and then we can arrange everybody on the battlefront. You can see it's a valley, and if we hide people behind that valley, they won't be able to be seen, and if we walk up a valley, it will take them longer, and if we run down a valley, they will run quicker. The archers run at a moderate speed, the soldiers may run slightly slower, the cavalry are our quickest units, they will run very quickly, and the elephants will run quite slowly indeed, and the catapults will run very slowly. They will move and drag their way across the battlefield, and they're usually at the back of the column. Again, we can't leave those at the front. Unfortunately, we have to wait for those to move from all the way from the back of the column. It might seem strange to play this on X1 speed, but believe you me, X1 is definitely quickly enough, because you've seen the speed of movement. If the enemy cavalry or the enemy legion decides to rush into us, then we won't stand much of a quick chance of deploying all our units. So we're doing it the slow way, and like most board games and like all the best strategy games, we have to do things the very slow way. And as this one battle, our first major battle, unfolds, you'll understand why, and you'll understand the mechanics of the game. At this point we have one elephant behind, but he's slowly manoeuvring his way along the back towards the back of the column. So let's choose the next map and zoom into the next level. See, the enemy soldiers are all clustered together and ours are pretty much spread out. So what I want to do is to move our archers over to the left flank, and I want to move our battalion of horses to the right flank, and because I've dragged all those 4 horses together, they will move together. So let's group our legions, let's split up our army, and let's form some kind of battle formation. At this point I want to move the horses behind the enemy, and they will be used in case the enemy try to break out anywhere. And you can see the slow elephants. Yes, we can drag the elephants into battle, but I don't tend to use those because they're only really amazing to block the enemy. They don't really kill them in great numbers. Elephants are basically mobile barge boards and mobile barriers to block the enemy. What I really want to do is to move those catapults onto the right and to move our archers to the left. And you can see I'm now breaking up the battalions, and let's move some guys into the centre of our battlefield as well. At this point there isn't much going on in the way of music or sound effects, and you don't get a jingle when you complete each mission or destroy each battalion either. Let's move our forces around, let's move our cavalry behind the hill where the enemy can't see those, and let's move our catapults to the ridge where the enemy can't really race up and get those in a big hurry. And ignoring really our elephants, I want to create a bottle for the enemy to funnel into, and the bottle stopper in this case will be our legions. And the legions of guys will create the stopper on the bottle and to save those marching forwards to kill our general. The sides of the bottle are comprised of arrows, and so let's move our arrows forwards, and they won't attack the enemy unless we guide those arrow paths towards the enemy locations. They will just move. And we can move our cavalry further over to the right, but I don't really want the cavalry onto the ridge, otherwise they'll be exposed. So what I really want to do is to move those cavalry almost behind the enemy, and that will block their retreat. If the enemy moves forwards into our trap, then that means we can use the cavalry to rush in behind and to clamp those in like an envelope. Taking a look at the big view, you can see our archers are almost into position, and our siege cannons as well. Nothing has been left behind on the battlefield, except for the general, and we're not really concerned about him. We only really need him to move around the units as a whole. See, the sides of the bottle are now forming, and we're not really going to risk marching in there with our infantry at the moment. I think infantry are the last thing that you really need to sacrifice in a battle, particularly when you've got siege engines, and catapults can only be found in cities, and only the cities that have those. We cannot buy catapults in the game. We cannot buy elephants in the game either. So if you don't have catapults or elephants, you're going to have to rely on archers as a long-range attack. You can see the Romans are launching a second long-range attack, but that won't reach us for a little while, so let's concentrate on this battle. You can see the Romans occasionally moving, they're getting rather nervous, and if we can, we really want to move those cavalry behind the Romans in case they try to leave the castle or try to exit to the east. You can see virtually the elephants are on the edge of battle. We really only need to use those to block out the enemy, and you can see we've left a few units behind to act as the bottle stopper. You can see the skull under the helmet, and that was actually our last battalion that we sent in there. If we auto send a battalion to contact the enemy, they will automatically be slaughtered, and unfortunately you can't remove the skull and the helmet from the map, or even the small map. I don't think. Maybe they disappear after you get so many on the screen. But those skulls and helmets can obscure all of the maps, and those are really annoying to get those everywhere. Finally, we get our legions and our squadrons into position, and the Romans are getting rather nervous at this point. So all we need to do is to drag and drop our units onto wherever they need to go, and I think if we attack the right side, the right flank first of all, with some of our boulder throwers, and let's lob some arrows into the same direction, into exactly the same units, we can destroy the guys and concentrate the firepower. Eventually that will begin to happen, and you can see projectiles being launched, boulders in this case being launched from both things to try and destroy the enemy. The enemy cannot move forwards because of our units, and if they try to escape we'll block them out with the cavalry. So what we're going to do is to block them in with boulders and arrows, and by right clicking on those we can see them being massacred. Now that is working, let's direct our firepower towards the central band. Now that they're all clustered together, we can use our long range attacks on those and not risk any of our legions, cavalry or infantry. We can also send in our elephants for what good that will do. They really do take a long time. We've got 9 elephants in this band, and those 9 elephants aren't going to do much except to frighten the enemy. It looks like most of them have now run away. Now let's concentrate on the final one, and eventually, if we use our long range attacks, we can destroy the enemy without sacrificing a single one of our infantry or cavalry. Eventually that will then disappear, and that is our cue to attack the main Roman, who will then disappear, and he will then disappear off the map as well. You can see the cavalry has stopped moving, and I think if we drag and drop units into the town we can then take that town, but I think only the general can take a town with all the units behind. So let's go back and select the general, and then we can drag and drop the whole thing into the town. See, we've won the battle, and the enemy is now disappeared off the map. That's a great sign, and you can see at the very top of the screen extra fresh Carthaginians and finances arriving on a ship. You can see at the bottom of the map extra fresh Romans, but they're miles away. It won't take them forever to get here, but it certainly will take them a long time because they have to wade their way through the towns, and the Romans like to take the towns individually, and that takes them a long time. Remember, the units cannot move unless they're facing left, and they won't face left until all the units are behind them. In Carthage, you can see our finances are piling up, and the aim of the game is to take all the money out of Carthage and to pile that into a city, and to buy troops in each city and send those against the Romans. So we can concentrate on doing that at the moment, and we can check out the map at this point while everything's nice and quiet. See loads of cities all around, and the Romans have only taken one city so far. It can get quite disheartening once the Romans have taken lots and lots of cities, but in order for us to get some more legions, all we can do is to send out our rider at this point, not the general, because the general's guards will move very, very slowly along the map. Again, we're struggling to drag the general down to Pupum, or whatever that said, and you can see some more forces have now landed at Carthage for our aid. So what we're going to do is to get back to Carthage now, and because Carthage has now got 12,700 talents in there, we really need to get there. The army, well, the hero in this case is not in the locality, so what we have to do is to go via the flags. That means we have to use the map to find the next flag, which is pretty unwieldy in this case. Dragging the larger map, you can see the Romans are on our tail, but we can now zoom in on that peninsula and then send out our rider towards that next flag by just dragging and dropping him on that location. Unfortunately, we want to select the next flag because we are at the bottom. We need to select this one, and because that's a little bit fiddly, there you go, it can sometimes be a little bit difficult. Set off on our way, and I find that without any money, you can see we are broke at the moment, so we don't have to watch out for the logs. We can simply rush our way as quickly as possible on towards that next town. By pushing forward on the joystick, he will whip the horses and move as quickly as possible. It's important to get used to this buggy boy aspect because this does take care of some, maybe a third or a quarter of the game, and the rest of it is in the close battles, which can take some time. You can see from the battles, that was our one and only battle that you'll see in this Playguide, but you can see we can drag units around, and it's very fun to do that and watch the enemy going into our trap. And the other side is simply riding around from city to city. Now that we're here, we can only recruit the guys that are already in the city, and there are 7 guards in the city, so there really isn't much point doing that at this stage. We can hit new army, and that will build a new army, or at least it will give us a general, but we cannot drag and drop that general around, and all we can have in there is the 7 units that used to be in the city garrison. So instead I'm going to drag and drop my chariot here, and we will ride back to Carthage itself. You can see that the landscape has changed, the hills have changed, the palm trees and cacti are here, and it's surprising to learn that every single route between every single city is completely different, and the landscape and the wildlife and the foliage and the objects that you will see are different in every single case. And I'm not sure if the weather changes, but you can see the city in the distance and also the water of the horizon as well. The water will be represented by the Mediterranean, and that will be in its correct position in our view. So it does feel like to some extent we are moving between those landscapes, and it's great to see those outrun palm trees as well. Fighting involved is at a minimum, and sometimes it's a good strategy to aim for the rear of the opponent's wheel, and that can get you through most problems. You can see one of our wheels is moving around a little bit, but there really isn't much damage to the wagon, and yes, you can destroy the chariot, and the enemy can capture the charioteer as well and hold him for ransom. We've arrived at Carthage. That means that we can collect a lot more money, and I think that we can collect maybe 2,000 talents in that little bag that we carry around with us, and that takes quite some time to take from the coffers, and as we shall see, it's very important to buy things in the game, so it's very important to take as much money with us as possible. Now we're going to learn to drive the easy way, and we cannot create a new army. Unfortunately in Carthage we can only do that from a city, So let's head off towards Utica. They have 80 cavalry there already, and so let's use our guy as well. And now let's learn to drive slowly in the game. You can see a new mountain range and different trees as we head off towards Utica. Whilst we are driving, the time in the real game goes at half speed, and that's great, but we really don't want to be moving slowly. At the same time, we really don't want to be losing money either. Learning to drive slowly is hazardous because sometimes you only see the logs at the last minute. Sometimes we can brake in time to save us losing money. And sometimes when we are moving slowly, we can veer slowly around the track. You can see this track is pretty windy, and at top speed actually we'll be thrown around on this track. And high speed turns and lots of huge logs are very difficult at high speed, but at slow speed it is possible to save as much of our money as possible. Utica is now on the horizon, so let's get a march on and let's get into that city. It's certainly great to see the city appearing, and we're moving into that, moving through the castle gate. Arriving at Utica, we can now click on the guy again, and he will be able to put money into the city and buy an army. If we click on a new army at this point, all we can employ into the army are the people that were already in the garrison in the city. So we won't spend a lot and we won't have a lot, and all we have is those 80 riders that were already in the city. And you can see all the rest of them are blank. We can click on the column to assign the riders, or we can exit and buy some more riders in the city. Let's click on the column and assign some of them. The more you click on the column, the more units you can assign, but obviously if they only have one rider in each, those are pretty much useless units, and you really want a skirmish group of maybe 10, 20, even 50 riders in a band, and then you can send that entire squadron into battle. You can see we can create quite a number of those, and each one can have their own corner colours as well, and that denotes the squadron. And you can see that all of those have 1 in there except for 51 in our final squadron. And you can see fresh supplies appearing. And so you have to click on the city itself, and that will give us the option actually to see what the city has within it. You can see a few archers in this one, and you can see some more archers in this one. So it is possible to go around city to city, collect the units and merge them together. Again, catapults and elephants can only be found in the cities, and Cupid, well, you can see the Romans have demolished that place, and once a Roman army demolishes a city, it will be wiped out. You can no longer get the elephants. You see money pouring into Carthage, and we can pour money into this city, and we've already delivered over 2/3 of our cash reserves into this city already, and bought all the archers. And you can only command 5 armies in the game, unfortunately, and so it's time to make a new army. We have some cash reserves, and our city reserves are increasing because of the local tax. So let's click on the city again, and let's choose to buy, this time, our new army. And we can buy an increasing number as long as we have that cash. Let's spend a fortune, and again you can't buy catapults or elephants, and with a fortune already in Carthage it will be wise to spend every single penny that we have at the moment and pour it into this city. You can see we've just created a sample army. We won't be going into any more battles, but you can see we can create squadrons and battalions, and so we can click on those, create the battalions of maybe up to 100 or 200 units in each one. And so we're just going to select some at random, and the rest, as far as I know, will be left in the city. You can see that we can only carry 5 armies in our entire army as a whole, and this is the 5th one. Taking a look at the magazine scores, no surprise that Amiga Joker gave the lowest score at 57%, Power Play gave this 59%, Zap Magazine awarded this 66%, the current score on Lemon Amiga for Carthage is 70%, Amiga Action awarded it 74%, Joystick Magazine gave it 78%, Ace Magazine gave it 78%, Acar awarded it 80%, The One gave it 81%, Amiga Format gave it 82%, Generation 4 gave it 86%, and Amiga User International gave it 88%, and that means the highest score went to Data Magazine, who awarded this game 90%. That gives the average score of 7.5 out of 10. I think this is quite a good game and a deep game once it gets going, but it can be frustrating, and so it's a mixed bag, and sometimes the buggy boy elements can let it down a little bit when all you want to do is to wade into that action. Thank you very much.